highlight the Chinese women's roles in China. In the pre-Mao era, Chinese women's roles are influenced by Confucian's values, such as the obedience to the father, husband, and son. And in the Mao era, due to the socialist revolution, so Chairman Mao has come up with the Chinese model, iron girl, who can hold up the half the sky. And in the post-era, because of market economic reform and also opening up, so Chinese women's roles are influenced by modernization and globalization. But at the same time, there is a trend of neo-Confucianism. And also, some scholars recently argue the resurgence of gender inequality in China. So after reading Fincher's book, she has written from a sociologist's perspective. She has inspired my study. So what is leftover women? Leftover women is a term coined by the All China's Women's Federation in the media in 2007. And it was officially listed as one of the neologisms by the Ministry of Education of the PRC. The definition is unmarried women who are older than 27. And interestingly, after a decade, I found out the All China Women's Federation tried to ban the usage of this term. So this justified the period of my corpus is between 2007 and 2017. So why do I study the Chinese English language news? Because previous studies, they have looked at this topic in the local Chinese language media. And these results pinpoint the traditional gender ideologies. So my study wants to look at the English language news media in China, which claim to be more liberal. So I want to see if there are other emerging contested ideologies. This could help to shed light on how the topic of leftover women is presented to the global audience. So what do I mean by tradition and modern? So some of these are the traditional ideologies, such as feminism, and these are the modern ideologies, such as individualism and egalitarianism. So I have three research questions. Number one, what are the physiological associations of leftover women? Number two, how are the metaphors employed to represent leftover women? Number three, what ideologies are portrayed from the linguistic patterns of representation? And how are they legitimized in the social context? So research question 1 and 2 are actually based on, the last question is based on the first and second questions. So I've conducted a literature review after examining more than 30 studies on gender representations. Some of these studies have combined corpus linguistic and CDA, and some of them combine critical metaphor theory, contemporary metaphor theory, and also CDA. So, but none of these studies have actually triangulated these three approaches to examine gender representation. And my study argued there is no single framework can adequately capture the multifaceted and ideological nature of gender representations. And therefore, my study proposed a tripartite multi-dimensional framework to investigate the representation of leftover women. And I want to look at the three aspects of this topic. Number one, physiological association. Number two, social action and legitimation. And number three, metaphor. So this framework sums up my methodology is still undergoing, and I welcome your comments so that I can improve it later. As you can see, the middle triangle, A, B, C, is actually the analysis of the text. So it's a microanalysis. And I will try to triangulate these three approaches to look at the gender representation and also ideologies. So after that, I will synthesize what representation and what ideologies is in the microanalysis, so that I can look at how are they legitimized in the macroanalysis. So here's the data. I collected data from two sources. Number one, China Daily. Number two, the Rice News Archive. And I used the search term leftover women and its synonyms. So this is the details of my corpus. And as you can see, leftover women is the most frequent. So I only examined this term as a canonical form. So these are the preliminary findings to my research question ones. What are the physiological association of leftover women? So I employed Sinclair's meaning shift units and also Vanuva's social semantic approach. As you can see, under MSU, there are 5 elements. Number 1, invariable core, collocation, semantic preference, and semantic paucity. So for the last 2 elements, this is where the CDA comes in. I use the social semantic approach to inform the categorization of things. And also I use 2 software because they can complement each other. So these are the collocation of leftover women. And the setting of Smith is 5.5. And the minimum frequency is 8 times. And these collocates actually occupy 70% of all the recurrence collocates. And 9 out of 10, the top 10 frequent collocates are function words, as you can see. And after that, I tried to categorize all the collocates into different word classes. And as you can see, I use the content words with leftover and woman with a wildcard to do a 3-word congruent search. And these lead to 682 concordance lines. So I put them in an Excel spreadsheet so that I can do some categorization. But very importantly, it's very crucial to look at the context articles instead of just concordanize. And so I use Vanuvan's social semantic approach to categorize them. And this is the results. There are 3 semantic preferences and 13 semantic paucity is associated with leftover women. And I will try to go through each one by one. So for the semantic preference, leftover women is actually a leologism. It is used to define a group of women who are older than 27, and also their marriage status and socio-economic status, independence, and also their provenance. I'm thinking because the target readership is English-speaking readers, so they might not know this term. And for the semantic paucity, surrounding the neologism, I will give you a minute to read through some of the examples, perhaps. Now, so for the semantic paucities, there is otherness. I highlighted in red because it's leaned towards the traditional gender ideology. So women who are older than 27 without getting married, they are seen as others by the Chinese societies. Neutral and disapproval of neologism. And as you can see, it's in green because I try to color code it as it leans towards the modern ideology. And actually, these women are also distinguished as men. So for the semantic preference, leftover women are associated with different types of action, and the majority of the action are enacted by other people in the society, and the rest are by leftover women. So the action of others, some of the strategies are material actions and exclusion of agents. So material action just means like they are representing as actual doing. And for the material exclusion of agents, most of the agents are excluded for their discriminatory acts. We don't know who are they, who are doing these acts. And for the actions of leftover women, they are normally passive actions and also deactivation. So for this, these are some of the examples. Please take a look. And these are the actions by leftover women. Please also take a look of the examples. And these are the semantic positives of actions. As you can see, there are two of them are highlighted in red, and they are associated with the traditional ideologies. So social discrimination, leftover women are always discriminated. They are labeled, they are called, they are discriminated. And also the actions of leftover women tend to be less passive. They didn't choose to become leftover women, but they just because they are aging, and they didn't get married, yeah. And credibility just means that they use quotation to establish the credibility of the newspaper, the journalism. That's the practice. So social phenomenon. Leftover women are abstracted as a social phenomenon, and the frequent caller case is China and China's. These are the provenance of this social phenomenon. And then the frequent caller case number is used to assimilate and aggregate leftover women as a homogeneous group rather than individuals. So these are the semantic positives. Please take a look. And the positives are neutral and also social controversy and uniqueness, emancipation, and profitability. The last one, profitability, just means this is a phenomenon for the dating programs to make money. So summary of my preliminary findings. So this would be the first chapter analysis, which answer my research question 1. Leftover women are found to be associated with theologism, a social phenomenon, and various actions which underlie the linguistic representations. Both traditional and modern ideologies coexist in this discourse. So, and now, what's coming up? So for my second chapter analysis, this will answer my research question 2. I will try to look at how metaphors are employed to represent leftover women, and as you see, it's unrealistic to extract every single metaphor from the corpus. So that's why I employed Paul Baker's downsampling method to select 28 articles with Smith, so that I could manually go through the articles. And I use Cameron's discourse dynamic approach to identify the metaphor related to leftover women, and also interpret the vehicles, and also explain the metaphor patterns and ideologies. And after that, I will synthesize the findings from chapter 1 and chapter 2 and try to see what are the linguistic representations and ideologies, and so that I could go to the third chapter to conduct a microanalysis. So for this chapter, I will try to look at how are these patterns, how are these ideologies legitimized within a wider social cultural context. Right, so I will use Verhoeven's legitimation strategies. He has a list of very detailed legitimation strategies to examine. So these are the implications. First, to propose a tripartite multi-dimensional framework to investigate gender representation, and number 2, contribute to the topic of leftover women and raise awareness of this gender equality. these are the selected references, and I welcome your constructive feedback. Thank you.
All right, thanks. That was quite fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have quite a bit of time for questions. So, please, the floor is yours. Audience members, panel members.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. I think it's quite interesting. I have two questions actually. So the first one is that in your first part, I mean in the analysis part, could you please elaborate a little bit on how what kind of criteria you use to evaluate the positive or negative or more than this kind of I mean the criteria that you use to judge whether the sentence is refers to the more than value or neutral value, this kind of thing. So my second question goes to the second research your second research question. That you mentioned that you want to look at how metaphor is used in representing the leftover women. So my question is that first, what kind of metaphor you're referring to? Do you mean the conventional metaphor or novel metaphor? But most importantly, I actually want to know why you want to look at metaphor as the specific. Do you mean the conceptual phenomenon or just a linguistic representation? I think I didn't get the information in the introduction part. So
thank you very much for your question, very intriguing. So for your first question, how do I categorize the semantic preferences? First, use context. It's important to look at the whole article instead of just concordanize. So context, okay? Number two, use a Van social semantic framework to inform the analysis to look at the semantic positives. So this is your first question. And number two question, because the metaphor